The fedora is on your head. It's 5:29 in the morning, July 16th, 1945. The New Mexico desert is completely silent. 40,000 feet of silence above a place the Spanish called Jornada del Muerto, the journey of the dead man. You're standing in a concrete bunker 10 miles from a steel tower you designed. In 30 seconds, everything you have spent 3 years building will either work or it won't. You whisper a line from the Bhagavad Gita, not because you are religious, less, but because nothing else fits. The light comes before the sound comes before the heat comes before the thought. And the thought, when it finally arrives, is this: now I am death, the destroyer of worlds. How did it start? New York City, 1910. You're 6 years old. Your family lives in an 11-room apartment on Riverside Drive, overlooking the Hudson River. Your father Julius came from Germany with nothing and built a textile importing business worth millions. Your mother Ella paints in the European style. Her canvases hang in every hallway. This is not poverty. This is not struggle. This is, in some ways, the worst possible starting point for someone who will spend his entire life needing to prove something. You collect minerals. By age 12, you have 250 specimens catalogued and labelled in your own handwriting. The New York Mineralogical Club invites you to give a lecture. They don't know you're 12 until you walk through the door. You read Greek and Latin. You write poetry in German. You're accelerated 2 full years ahead in school, and every adult in your life tells you that you are exceptional. None of them tell you what exceptional costs. You lose the ability to be ordinary, and you don't notice yet that this is a loss. 1921. You finish Harvard in 3 years, pivoting from chemistry to physics after 1 summer in New Mexico. Your first time in the desert that will, in 20 years, define everything. You board a ship to Cambridge at 17. You have never failed at anything. This is a problem that hasn't announced itself yet. The hardest part of being extraordinary is that no one warns you about the loneliness waiting on the other side. Cambridge, England, 1921. You're assigned to Patrick Blackett's lab at the Cavendish, one of the most prestigious physics laboratories in the world. The problem is immediate. You're a theoretical physicist placed inside an experimental lab. You're bad with your hands in a way that surprises you. You make errors that younger students don't make. For the first time in your life, you're not the best person in the room. The room itself is wrong, not you, but you don't know that yet. You're supposed to be running experiments on thin beryllium films. Instead, you stay up until 3 a.m. reading Dante in the original Italian and writing poetry no one has asked for. The depression arrives quietly, then loudly. Your tutor Blackett grows concerned. In a moment you will never fully explain, you leave a poisoned apple on his desk, an act somewhere between breakdown and metaphor. You are brilliant, and you are unravelling simultaneously. And those two things will never fully separate again. You lose the assumption that intelligence is enough. The universe is indifferent to how fast you read. 1926. You transfer to the University of Göttingen under Max Born, the living centre of the quantum mechanics revolution. Werner Heisenberg is down the hall. Paul Dirac visits on Thursdays. The uncertainty principle is being argued, written, rewritten in seminars you attend every week. You publish your first major paper at 23. You earn your PhD in 1927, age 23. The depression lifts, replaced by something that feels like purpose, but will one day function as fuel for something far larger than you. You finally understand what you're for. The question you haven't asked yet is, for whom? Berkeley, California, 1929. You're 25 years old with a joint appointment at UC Berkeley and Caltech, the first person to hold both simultaneously. American theoretical physics barely exists as a serious discipline. Europe has Bohr, Heisenberg, Pauli, Dirac. America has almost nothing. You're going to change that, and you know it, and the knowing is intoxicating. You teach with a cigarette in one hand and a piece of chalk in the other. Students trail you between campuses, Berkeley to Pasadena, sitting in on seminars they weren't assigned to. You buy a ranch in New Mexico's Sangre de Cristo Mountains and name it Perro Caliente, hot dog. On weekends, you ride horses through high desert and read Sanskrit. You have taught yourself the Bhagavad Gita in its original language, not out of spirituality, but because you find the physics of karma mathematically coherent. The line about death and destruction sits in your memory like a stone you keep turning over. You lose political neutrality. The 1930s arrive. The Depression, the Spanish Civil War, fascism, Jewish scientists fleeing Germany with nothing. Your students join the Communist Party. Your lover Jean Tatlock is a member. Your brother Frank joins. You never formally join, but you donate money, attend meetings, sign petitions. In 1936, 1938, 1940, your name goes on documents that will be read again, later, by people who are not physicists. December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor. Within weeks, the government begins consolidating the nation's top physicists. On December 2nd, 1942, Enrico Fermi achieves the first sustained nuclear chain reaction beneath the bleachers of a squash court in Chicago. The telephone call to you comes shortly after. General Leslie Groves needs a scientific director for a project that does not yet have a name. He tells you it will change the war. He does not tell you it will change everything after the war as well. You say yes before he finishes the sentence. Later you will wonder whether the desert called you back, or whether you were always heading there. Los Alamos, New Mexico, November, 1942. You're standing on a mesa 7,300 feet above sea level, looking at a boys' boarding school with a few wooden buildings and a view that stretches 100 miles in every direction. This is where you will build the bomb. You chose this location yourself. You knew this land from your horseback rides through the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. The irony is not lost on you. The most beautiful place you have ever seen will become the most dangerous laboratory in human history. The address of Los Alamos officially does not exist. Mail goes to P.O. Box 1663, Santa Fe. Your wife Kitty's name on her son's birth certificate lists her address as a post office box. You're building a city of 130,000 people that the United States government has erased from the map. You wake at 6 a.m. You run 3 simultaneous technical divisions, theoretical, experimental, weapons design, while also managing the egos of the most difficult collection of Nobel laureates ever assembled in one place. Niels Bohr is here under the name Nicholas Baker. Enrico Fermi goes by Henry Farmer. You are James Oppenheimer, but everyone calls you Oppie, and when you walk across the mesa, the scientists stop what they're doing and watch you pass. You have lost 18 pounds since arriving. You smoke 3 packs a day. Your fedora is always on, in the lab, in the meetings, in the photographs that will later define how the world pictures this moment. You hold weekly colloquia where the entire project comes together to review progress. You chair these meetings with a combination of precision and theatre that no one else on the mesa can replicate. You understand not just the physics, but the people. Who needs encouragement, who needs pressure, who is close to breaking. Who is close to a breakthrough. You lose your marriage in slow motion. Kitty drinks. Your former lover, Jean Tatlock, is in San Francisco, depressed, isolated, monitored by Army intelligence because of her Communist Party membership. You visit her in June 1943, telling security you need to see her. They follow you. They document everything. They say nothing. Yet. January 4th, 1944. Jean Tatlock is found dead in her bathtub in San Francisco. She's 29. The coroner rules it suicide. No. You're not permitted to attend the funeral. The project cannot afford the security exposure. You receive the news in your office on the mesa, 8 miles from the nearest telephone that isn't monitored. You sit with it alone. You fold it into the same place you put everything that cannot be spoken about, and you return to work. The mesa teaches you the only lesson Los Alamos has to offer. Some things cannot be mourned on schedule. July 16th, 1945. Alamogordo Bombing Range, New Mexico. The steel tower is 100 feet tall and stands in the center of a flat desert basin, the Spanish-named Jornada del Muerto, the dead man's route. At the top of the tower is a plutonium device your team calls the Gadget. It weighs 10,000 pounds. You have spent 32 months building it. In 4 minutes you will know whether it works. The weather has been catastrophic, thunderstorms all night. Lightning strikes close enough to the tower that you delayed the test 3 times. General Groves is furious, pacing, pressuring you to proceed. The original target date was July 4th. You chose to wait. This is the last purely technical decision you will ever make. In the final hours before detonation, you do not sleep. You walk the perimeter of base camp in the dark. The desert at 4 a.m. is absolutely cold and absolutely still. Your hands are not steady. You have prepared 2 statements, one for if the test succeeds, one for if it fails. You rehearse neither. At 5:10 a.m, you lie face down in the dirt of the observation bunker, 10 miles from the tower, wearing welding goggles rated for the brightest industrial light sources available in 1945. They are not rated for this. At 5:29:21 a.m, the gadget detonates with a yield of 21 kilotons, equivalent to 21,000 tons of TNT, 5 times larger than the most optimistic projections. The light is visible from 3 states. A blind woman 50 miles away sees it through closed eyes. The sound reaches you 45 seconds later, rolls across the desert like the earth clearing its throat, and then the mesa goes quiet again. You lose the future you were living in 10 seconds ago. It closes behind you like a door with no handle on the inside. In the bunker, as the mushroom cloud reaches 40,000 feet, you say the words aloud, the line from the Bhagavad Gita that has lived in your memory since Göttingen. Now I am death, the destroyer of worlds. You say it quietly. Ken Bainbridge, the test director, turns to you and says, "Now we're all sons of bitches. Both of you are right. Neither statement will appear in the official record." 3 weeks later, on August 6, 1945, a uranium bomb called Little Boy is dropped on Hiroshima. You are not told in advance which day it will happen. You hear about it on the radio, the same way everyone else does. You built the most powerful thing in human history, and when it was finally used, you found out about it like a civilian. Los Alamos, August 6, 1945. The radio announcement comes at midday. A single bomb has destroyed a Japanese city of 350,000 people. 70,000 are dead before sunset. The word atomic is used for the first time in a public broadcast. Around you on the mesa, scientists cheer, some cry, some do both. You walk into the weekly colloquium that evening and people raise their fists in triumph as you enter. You raise your fist back, you smile, you say the right things. You tell them the Japanese didn't like it. You need them to believe you believe this, because the project continues, because Nagasaki comes 3 days later on August 9th, because Fat Man detonates over a city of 250,000 people and kills 40,000 in the first hour, and the war ends 6 days after that, and the victory is total and real, and you are a hero. Privately, in your office, you write a letter to the Secretary of War. You write, "We have made a thing, all things considered. That is a most terrible weapon. You don't send it yet. You sit with the fedora on the desk in front of you, not on your head, and you look at it for a long time. On October 16th, 1945, you resign as director of Los Alamos. At the farewell ceremony, you tell your staff, if atomic bombs are to be added to the arsenals of a warring world, or to the arsenals of nations preparing for war, then the time will come when mankind will curse the names of Los Alamos and Hiroshima." The applause is uncertain. People are not sure what they just heard. You lose the clean line between creation and consequence. From this moment, every interview, every lecture, every photograph of you will be read through the lens of August 6th. You did not drop the bomb. You made it possible to drop the bomb. The difference feels enormous to you. It will feel smaller and smaller with every passing year. October 25th, 1945. You meet President Truman in the Oval Office. You tell him, "Mr. President, I feel I have blood on my hands." Truman is visibly irritated. After you leave, he tells an aide, "I don't want to see that son of a bitch in this office ever again. You never do meet again. The most powerful man in the country has decided that your conscience is an inconvenience, and inconvenient men in Washington are eventually dealt with." You walk out of the White House with blood on your hands and the sudden understanding that the people who sent you into the desert will not be the ones to help you carry it back. Washington, D.C., 1946. You're the most famous scientist in America. Your face is on the cover of Time magazine. Your name is used in congressional hearings the way other names are used to invoke authority. What does Oppenheimer say? What does Oppenheimer think? You chair the General Advisory Committee to the newly formed Atomic Energy Commission. You have more access to power than at any point in your life. You have never felt more alone inside it. The city moves at the speed of fear. The Soviet Union is building its own bomb. You know this because you understand the physics, and the physics does not belong to any one country. In 1949, the Soviets detonate Joe-1, their first nuclear test in the Kazakh steppe. Washington panics. Edward Teller begins lobbying for something called the Super, a hydrogen bomb, a fusion weapon, a device that would make Little Boy and Fat Man look like firecrackers. The yield would not be measured in kilotons, it would be measured in megatons. The difference is not arithmetic, it is civilizational. You sit in rooms where the word megaton is spoken without hesitation, by men in suits who have never stood 10 miles from a detonation in welding goggles watching the sky turn white. You write papers, you give testimony, you chair meetings, you use every instrument of institutional access available to you to argue, methodically and precisely, that the hydrogen bomb is not a military weapon. It is an instrument of genocide. And there is no strategic doctrine that justifies its existence. The argument is correct. You know it is correct. Several Nobel laureates agree it is correct. It does not matter. On January 31st, 1950, President Truman authorizes full development of the hydrogen bomb. You are not consulted. You read about it in the newspaper. You lose the belief that being right is a form of protection. In Washington, being right about the wrong thing is indistinguishable from being dangerous. 1953. A letter arrives at the FBE, written by William Liscombe Borden, former executive director of the Joint Congressional Committee on Atomic Energy. The letter states, in formal government language, that J. Robert Oppenheimer is, more probably than not, an agent of the Soviet Union. The evidence cited includes his brother's Communist Party membership, Jean Tatlock's Communist Party membership, donations made in the 1930s, and his opposition to the hydrogen bomb. Every item on the list you already knew about. Every item on the list was known when you were given your security clearance in 1943. None of it is new, all of it is now being used differently. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover forwards the letter to the White House. President Eisenhower orders a blank wall erected between Oppenheimer and all classified information. You are not informed. You continue showing up to meetings that are now quietly emptied of anything you are no longer permitted to know. You spent 8 years building the architecture of American nuclear policy. It takes one letter to brick you out of the building entirely. Washington, D.C., April 12, 1954. Room 2022, Building T3, Atomic Energy Commission Headquarters. You are 50 years old. The room has no windows. There is a stenographer in the corner. Across the table sits Roger Robb, a prosecutor who has spent 6 weeks reading your FBI file, a file you have never been permitted to see. The hearing is classified. Your lawyers are not cleared for everything being discussed. You're defending a security clearance using evidence you're not allowed to fully examine, in a proceeding whose transcript will not be released for decades, before a board that has already been privately told by the chairman of the AEC what conclusion is expected. This is not a trial, you have committed no crime. This is something more precise, an erasure. The hearing runs for 4 weeks. You sit in the windowless room for hours every day while Roger Robb reads back to you things you said in 1943, in 1946, in 1949, pulling them out of context with the patience of a man who has all the time in the world and knows the outcome in advance. Edward Teller testifies against you. Teller, who worked beside you on the mesa, who ate dinner in your home, who you supported for years, tells the board he would feel more secure with the vital interests of the country in other hands. When he finishes testifying, he extends his hand to you in the hallway. You shake it. You do not know why. Perhaps because there is nothing else to do with your hands. 27 of your colleagues testify on your behalf. Hans Bethe, Isidore Rabi, George Kennan. Rabi, who has known you since the 1930s, tells the board, "We have an A-bomb, and a whole series of it. What more do you want? Mermaids?" His testimony is precise and furious and completely ineffective. The board has already decided. The testimonies are recorded and filed, and the outcome does not change. You lose the last version of yourself that believed institutions could be reasoned with. The men across the table are not unreasonable. That is what makes it final. June 29th, 1954. The Atomic Energy Commission votes to revoke your security clearance by a margin of 4-1. The official finding: you are a loyal citizen, but your associations and conduct represent a security risk. The distinction between loyal and trustworthy is the entire machinery of what they have done. You're loyal enough to not be prosecuted. You're not trustworthy enough to be permitted to think about nuclear weapons. The government you helped save from its enemies has spent 4 weeks telling you, in formal language, that your conscience is a liability. You leave the building in the afternoon light. You're wearing the fedora. A photographer is waiting outside and takes your picture. And in the photograph your expression is not readable. Not angry, not broken, not resigned. just present, just a man in a hat walking out of a building, carrying something the camera cannot see. They took the clearance. They could not take the knowledge. They also could not take back what the knowledge had already done. In 1963, President Lyndon Johnson awards you the Enrico Fermi Award, the highest honor the Atomic Energy Commission can bestow. It is, in the language of Washington, an apology that cannot call itself an apology. You accept it. You shake Johnson's hand. You do not say what you are thinking. You retire to Princeton, where you have directed the Institute for Advanced Study for 17 years. Your office is quiet. The visitors still come. Students, journalists, historians, physicists who want to understand what it was like to stand at the centre of the century's most consequential decision. You answer their questions carefully. You do not perform regret and you do not perform pride. You sit with the thing the way you sat with everything that could not be spoken about on the mesa, in full, without flinching, without resolution. In early 1966, the doctors find throat cancer. You have smoked 3 packs a day since Cambridge. You continue smoking. There is a point past which quitting is not a statement about the future, but merely a comment on the past, and you have never been interested in commentary. February 18th, 1967. Princeton, New Jersey. You're 62 years old. The fedora is on the desk. Not on your head, on the desk. The same way it sat on the desk in Los Alamos the afternoon you heard about Hiroshima on the radio. It is grey and slightly misshapen from 20 years of the same hand picking it up and setting it down. Inside the band, in your own handwriting, barely legible now, is the single Sanskrit word you wrote there in 1943 before the project had a name: karma, action, consequence, the arrow that cannot be called back once it leaves the bow. You look at it for a long time. The question the world spent 20 years asking you, do you regret it, always contained a false assumption, that regret changes the yield, that guilt alters the half-life, the atoms don't care, the desert doesn't care. Trinity happened at 5:29 a.m. on July 16th, 1945, and it will always have happened, and the light from that morning is still travelling outward into space at 186,000 miles per second, and no hearing, no revoked clearance, no Fermi Award will ever catch up to it. What you built outlived your ability to shape it. What you said outlived the rooms where you said it. What you destroyed, the clean world before August 6th, outlived everyone who destroyed it. The fedora sits on the desk. No one is coming back for it.